Okay, folks, for this week's lesson, we're going to be taking a look at the use of video files and audio files in After Effects. So what I'm going to do first for this is I'm going to be importing some video files to start working with. So I'm going to go to File, Import, File, and I'm going to choose the documents that I've set up for this lecture. And so for this, I'm going to grab this file here called Motion, and I'm going to hit Open. Now, when you want to work with a video file in After Effects, it's important to note that video files come in at the duration that they were set up at. So with other kinds of files in After Effects, you set the time length, but because it's time-based media, it comes in at the duration it already is. So this file that I have right here, this motion file, I'm going to drag and drop this to the new composition icon. And what this does is it creates a new composition that matches the video file. Okay? So it'll set it up to match the file. And if I scrub through it, you'll see that it tries to show you as best it can the footage. Okay, now over here, you'll see the eyeball icon and then the speaker box icon with, for whether or not we would use the audio for this file. And so, but for the most part, all of our normal controls exist. So position, scale, rotation, and opacity work the same as they did before. Also, one thing to note is that it has these end points, so it has in and out points. If you double click on this layer, it'll bring you to layer edit mode. And what layer edit mode does is, this is kind of like if you've worked in an editing software package before, this is kind of like the preview monitor where you're making, where you can make in and out points. So let's say I wanted to just use a section of this. I could go to, say, the 10-second mark, and I can press the out button here, and now it'll only be those 10 seconds, and then the rest is hidden. Okay? So now that is the basics of using video in After Effects. Well, one other thing too that I wanted to show you guys is that the After Effects menu has a lot of great controls for video, but they can be used on any kind of layer. But there's a lot of advantages to working with video with these, so I'm going to go over a couple of those. So, to demonstrate, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the effects. I'm going to highlight my footage here, and I'm going to go to the effects menu. Now, everybody's effects menu is going to look a little bit different. Because you can purchase and use all kinds of different third-party plugins, and because this, After Effects is kind of my thing, I have a ton of third-party plugins. But for the most part, all of the ones I'll be using in this class for our lectures will be the ones that are available in the Adobe Creative Cloud version. So let's say I wanted to make this shot blurrier. I could come to Blur and Sharpen here, and I can use Gaussian blur. And you'll notice that over here I now have stopwatch settings for various different kinds of changes that I could make with the tools involved. So let's say over time I want the shot to get blurrier. I will start by clicking up here to start the stopwatch for blurriness. Now that also is repeated down here. So I can open up blurriness here. And then at the 4-second mark, let me make it, I'll increase the blurriness. And if I get it up really, really high, it's going to get really, really blurry. And then over time, it'll go from being in focus to blurry. All right. Now, like any other tool, you can just click on the stopwatch to remove that. Now, I am going to make a new. I'm going to come back over to my project window here, and I am going to import another piece of video. So I'm going to go to File, Import File, and I'm going to grab this shouting clip. Now, this shouting clip has an actress standing in front of a green screen, okay? And one of the things that you can do with After Effects is you can take a shot with a background and key it out. So to do that, what we'll need to do is use an effect. But before I do that, I'm going to go to my pen tool up here. And what I'm going to do is cut out the general shape of this actress. This is called making a garbage matte. And what garbage mattes are used for is creating a mask that connects the beginning to the end. You've basically completed your mask. But I'm only doing that to just limit the amount of area that I'll have to use the keyer on. This is just kind of a common industry practice. I was a little maybe too sloppy with it. I missed a few things. Okay, now I'll go to my effects and I'll go to the keying section and I'll use Keylight. And what I'm going to do is where it says screen color here, I'm going to use the eyedropper, grab that green, and bye-bye background. Okay? There are all kinds of effects in After Effects that you can work with. We will probably not cover all of them. Some of the third-party ones can become as complicated as learning a whole other software package. I just wanted to give you guys kind of a quick introduction to the effects menu. So I'm going to remove the actors for a moment. In addition to some of the things we've already talked about in the effects menu, there is a whole group of color correction, and a lot of these are used for standard color correction, color grading, a lot of things you can do with these guys here. A couple of them I wanted to mention is, first, you can use levels here. And what levels is used for is lightening and darkening. So if I go this way, it gets a lot darker. This is your dark values. These are your highlight values. So if I go this way, it'll get a lot brighter. And this in here is your gray point. This is your gamma. Okay? Gives you a lot of control over your footage. I'm going to show you guys a quick technique you can use in a new composition. So I'm going to go back to my project menu here, and I'm going to create a new composition. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to import the footage first. I'm going to go to File, Import, File, and I'm going to import this wildflowers footage. I'm going to take this, and I'm going to drag it to the new composition icon. And here's this nice footage of the wildflowers. Okay? What I'm going to do next is I want to do the classic After Effects film look to this footage. And to do that, we'll have to start working with After Effects' color modes. So first thing I'm going to do, I have this footage here, okay, and it's this nice footage of, these wildflowers. I'm going to duplicate it by hitting Command D or Control D if you're on a PC. Okay, so I have two copies of the same footage. Okay, down here, I'm going to rename this Original. going to spell it correctly. And up here, I'm going to rename this Treated. The original, I'm going to leave the original alone for right now. On the Treated, I'm going to go to my effects menu, and I'm going to go to my my color correction, and I'm going to choose hue and saturation. And what I'm going to do with hue and saturation is I'm going to completely desaturate the footage. I'm going to drop it to 0 on master saturation, and you'll get a like a black and white shot. I'm going to make it a little darker, so I'm going to take the lightness down a little bit. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come back down here, and I'm going to go to my toggle switches and modes button. These here are your switches. These get flipped on and off, and we've talked about a couple of them. But if I click here, it's going to switch over to the modes. Right now the mode, the transfer mode is set to normal. But if I were to change it, it would change it from the normal mode doesn't look to any of the layers below for color information. But if I open this up, I have a pretty long list of different modes I could be using. So this group up here is the group of different transfer modes that don't look to the layers below. This here is your darkening group. This is the one that looks to the information below and makes it darker. This group here is your brighter group. This here is your overlay group. This is your difference group, where it's going to be reversing colors. This gives you some pretty wild results. This is your color group, and then these are your stencil alphas, which is a, this is a more advanced area. What we're going to work with right now is we're going to go to multiply. And then now what you get is this kind of darker and richer version of the original footage. So this is what it looks like with our effect, and that's what it looked like normally. And this just kind of gives it just a nice, like, deeper tone, and it makes it look, more like a movie. Okay, now another thing we can do is, let's say we wanted to add some vignetting here. What I can do is go to the layer up here. I'm going to go to New Solid. I'm going to choose Black. And then what I'll do is I'm going to, instead of using this here, I'm going to hit Make Comp Size. This will just make a black solid over my footage. But if I come up here and choose the ellipse tool, I can make a mask that will only show, I want it to be so that I've only got a shape around the edge, something like this. And then what I'll do is I'll go to my black solid, and in my mask I'll invert it, and you'll start to get a vignetted look. Now, to get more of the vignette look, I'll open up my mask and increase the feather. And there you have it. So this is what we have now, but this is what we started with. Okay? So that is kind of the overview of working with video in After Effects. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to do is show you guys how to add in an audio file. So we can go to my project window, and I'm going to go to File, Import, and just like with audio files, just like with video files, audio files come in at whatever duration the source is. So I'm going to be bringing in this song. and I'm going to drag it into my timeline. And you'll see that it shows up like normal. You don't have the eyeball there because it's an audio file. If I click down here to open, you'll see there's an audio drop down. And if I open that, there's a waveform here. And the waveform will just show you what the sound is doing at that point. And it'll just give you kind of a good idea of where you might want to start the track. So let's say right about here, I'll hit in, and then when I come back, and I mean, there's not a whole lot you're going to want to do with audio in After Effects because basically audio is usually managed elsewhere. You would only really want to put final mixes in and that sort of thing. But that's just to give you an idea of what you can do with audio in After Effects. Okay, all of this should apply to your next project, which will be to create a 10 to 20 second personal production company logo. And there's more details on that in Brightspace. All right, guys, have a good week.